because of the deeds of men who were futile. This passage, often quoted in Sufi literature, evokes that moment out of time when God, after he has summoned in his presence all the souls that will dwell on earth, make them testify that he is indeed the sustainer from whom they borrow their very being, their very existence. Their true identity then, who they truly are, is defined by that moment beyond time, in eternity, when they lovingly said to their Lord, yes, surrendering to him. And it should be here remembered that Islam means surrender in peace to the beloved. As they entered time and lived in this world of ours, being just humans, all these souls forgot that primordial encounter, but still their true nature has it stamped on it. That is why they are always driven by the desire to undertake the journey back through remembrance to that moment towards their true nature, the yes by which they gave consent to the Lord on the day he asked, Alastu bi Rabbikum. There is the affirmation of a primordial nature of the human being that recognizes the oneness of God and therefore establishes the responsibility of the individual vis-à-vis his creator. There is no excuse to ignorance based on that of the forefathers. The very spirit of Sufism is that the covenant between God and the human being means that God is the ultimate object of his creature's desire. The consequence to be drawn from that spirit is the notion that many paths lead to the same truth, precisely what the foundation of Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba's teaching is. Insistence that the multiplication of Sufi orders, in spite of the oneness of the goal, comes only from differences that are nothing when compared to the uniqueness of the driving force behind them, which is love. In fact, those differences constitute a blessing for the community. This is the firm foundation upon which the Sheikh's refusal of division and sectarianism was established. That can be seen in the fact that his path did not bear his name, as often in Sufi orders, but the general designation of Muridiyya, because indeed he spoke in the name of all Muslims and of Islam, all Muslims being Murids. We are witnesses that the Sheikh Murtada yesterday and the Sheikh Souleymane Bachir today do not present themselves otherwise than just ambassadors of Islam. The attitude evoked in these verses, the understanding and love for the different manifestations of the same truth that are expressed here, those are Sufism. Tolerance is not, therefore, an addition to it, an accident added to Sufism. It is in the very nature of Sufism to recognize that the created being is in its essence a movement towards God, and to recognize that movement in all living creatures. That is the reason why, even in the time of oppression and colonial rule under which the Sheikh was living, he did not call for any form of resistance other than nonviolence and the attitude that expresses the true meaning of jihad, the personal struggle to overcome one's own darkness and to transform oneself into the light that we are called to become, in conformity with the following Quranic prayer, Rabbana atmim lana nurana waghfir lana innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. The Sheikh teaches that through such a non-violent work on oneself, such action of transforming the darkness of the lower soul into the light of the spirit, can we achieve a life that is beyond the reach of oppression, beyond the reach of violence, above division and discord, beyond the reach of destruction and death. I believe that this point is made with the utmost eloquence in the famous opening of a poem in which he insists that in spite of the appearances, he was sheltered from the oppression of his tormentors, dwelling indeed in the word of peace and light, and not in that of violence and darkness. Asiru ma'al abrar hina asiru wa dhanna al-ghada inni hunaka asiru. Whenever I walk, it is in the company of the venerated ones, while my enemies believe that I am walking in this realm where they dominate. The following question could then be raised. Is that sheer escapism and some dreamy mysticism by which one would simply ignore this word and it travails, its violence, its inequalities, its injustices, and turn oneself towards another word? Indian poet and philosopher Allama Muhammad Iqbal quotes the Sufi master Abdul Qudus of Ganga as having declared once, and this is a kind of witticism: Muhammad of Arabia ascended the highest heaven and returned. I swear by God that if I had reached that point, I would never have returned. I'm sure most of us would not have returned from that point of bliss. Iqbal has the following comment about that statement. He writes, I quote him, "For the mystic, the repose of unitary experience is something final. For the prophet, it is the awakening within him of word-shaking psychological forces calculated to completely transform this human world. The desire to see his religious experience transformed into a living word force is supreme in the prophet." End of quote. In fact, the question here is not so much that of the distinction between the mystic and the prophet, than the understanding of the notion of responsibility. And our minister, Madam Ndoye, just reminded us of the meaning of responsibility. The Prophet ﷺ had the responsibility to come back from that unitary experience known as his mirage in order to educate humanity and to transform the world in conformity with the message he had been entrusted with. The accomplished mystic has therefore the vocation of not staying there, but of coming back and translating his vision into a force of transformation. And indeed, the Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba was such an accomplished mystic. Dwelling with the venerated ones was not his goal. He felt that he had a responsibility towards humanity in its totality, that he had to educate us out of darkness into the light of knowledge. Mina dhulumat ila nur. True worship and the action of transforming our condition through peaceful means, from oppression to emancipation, from inequality to justice, from poverty to development. The emphasis he put on work, and that Madam Minister reminded us, is well known. Education is the way to transform our condition. And Souleymane Bachir is indeed walking in his grandfather's and father's footsteps by bringing together his role as an ambassador of Islam with his mission of realizing the University Sheikh Ahmadou Bamba. Around that mission, he has gathered many academics of all different stripes who share a deep belief in learning and who are willing for that reason to follow his leadership. I've been blessed to be asked by him to be part of such a mission. For that, too, I am profoundly grateful. Thank you, Souleymane Mor. Thank you, Mika. And thank you all for your kind attention.